first time I've really done a panel of this size, so a little bit nervous. The last one was much
You're
smaller.
excited.
We're so excited. Excited. We're Equestria Plush. I'm Marie. This is my husband Steve. My son Aaron.
Hello.
There's also another young lady that does it with me, and her name is Jordan. Just to tell you a little bit about how I got started. My son would get up at I don't know what time in the morning and get online and watch My Little Pony with a friend he made in Texas, Josh. And I was like, what are they doing? It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. Then my girlfriend's daughter, she wanted to make OCs for her girlfriends for Christmas, and that was in 2011. So I said, well, yeah, I'll teach her how to sew. So we went over to her house and we kind of went over some sewing basics. The next weekend, they came over to my house and set some tables up, and we made some ponies. And this is what came out of that. That's my first, well, pony. We had, hers were, the OCs came out really good. She did everything by hand, and it kind of started from there. What you see here is about 21 pattern revisions that we'll talk about. The rest are not really shown at all. They're like, oh, they're in a big bag of, oh my gosh, what did I do? First thing I wanted to do was show you, I have a little presentation of a Pinkie Pie going together. So it kind of goes by a little bit quickly, but not too bad. I'm gonna have a question and answer at the end. So some of the stuff I go over might answer some of the questions you might already have, and if it doesn't, then I can answer some at the end. Okay? All right. Wow. That's kind of it going together. That was an adventure making those pictures. First thing I wanted to talk about was patterns. A pattern is probably one of the most important things you can have for your pony. You have to decide how you want your pony, what expression you want, and there's lots of mediums to study. You can study the show. I like accuracy with each pony does all kinds of different things in the show. We all know that. I find one that when they're doing something really awesome that I think is really cute, that's the expression I try to catch. So I use the show. Some people use other people's artwork. There's all kinds of artwork on DA, people's ideas of what they think the ponies are, their perceptions. So you got to find a medium that you really love. It might even be your own. Personally, I can't draw. It's like stick people, so it's not going to be mine. But you need to find that, study it, and put it to paper. And that's really how you're going to start making a pattern. And that's how you're going to get where you are. Pattern making is not easy. I'm going to tell you that right now. It is really hard. If you can, there are lots of patterns available if any of you belong to DA. If you just go to the search and put pony patterns, they'll come up with all kinds of patterns on there. I usually recommend a young lady named Valley Violet. She has a pattern that, she has several actually. She has a colt, she has a mare. I think she just put a Luna up. I'm not sure if she's selling that yet. And like a little flying, like shoulder type pony. And she puts out the most detailed instructions that almost seem overwhelming. It's like 16 pages of instructions, but they're all there. And it's a good place to start. You can make one of those, and then you can start making it your own if you absolutely can't draw like me. So that's a good place to start. But just know that when you do that, you have to not start with Minky. You need to start with a fabric that's not going to stretch. Minky stretches, and it also slips, and does all kinds of crazy things. So if you don't have experience sewing, try to find someone in your family, in your church, community groups, Girl Scouts, something like that can sew, that can teach you some basics. Because that's really all you need is basics, and then you can go from there. Make sure you know your machine. But patterns, patterns, patterns. The only way you're going to get what you want is having your pattern right. No amount of corrective sewing can fix it. It has to be the pattern. Okay? So for me, in the process, the first thing we do is we get the fabric in. I use all Minky. I have several sources that I get them from, all on the internet. I have to use several because I want colors. Not any one particular supplier will have all the colors I want. And sometimes I'll order from the same supplier and the Minky will be of different quality. So it's very hit and miss on that for me. I haven't been able to find that. So we cut it into rectangles. That's our first step at Equestria Plush. And then we do our embroidery, which my husband does. He takes care of that for me. We got the embroidery software, and I started to do the tutorial on it. My son came over and said, oh, you know, this, and I was lost. So I was like, okay. So he does all of that for me.
She didn't have the patience to work with the computer, what you need to do to get that to work.
So we put all of the embroidery on it. We do one piece, so it takes, I'm not sure, some sort of math and grids and things, and to get it lined up in order to come out as it should with the eye and the cutie mark. So that's the first thing we do. And then, next is pinning. We cut it out after that, and then pinning. If you're using Minky, pins are your friend because it moves. I pin about every half inch, seriously. I've had a couple of people come in and watch me sew, or they'll want to come and learn, and they'll want to just put 1 or 2 or 3 pins. It doesn't work. If you put a pin in there, it will stay, and when you go under your machine, it'll come out. If you don't have enough pins, it'll be twisted, it won't come out right, it'll be puckered. So really take the time to pin. I like to use long quilting pins because they're easy to use. Even on the small ones, I use big pins. Little tiny pins, they slip around and they're hard to put in. It's hard to get the Minky to stay straight. So pinning is like really important. It seems so simple, and I'm sure those of you who sew probably know that. Pinning is a big deal. So you definitely want to do that. Sewing. Okay, sewing. I use 1/4-inch seams on all of my sewing. I know traditional sewing. Before this, I like to do costumes. I have a niece that I make replica costumes of from different movies and stuff. You use 5/8 seams when you sew. It's really impossible to use 5/8 for me, for the style that I use to do 5/8 seams, because when you're trying to get a little point like this, you just can't have a 5/8. So I use a quilting seam, a 1/4 inch, and that seems to work pretty good. Some of the things I don't even cut out. Like when you cut a piece out to sew, some of these like this, I won't cut it out. I actually just draw it on the fabric, and I draw my sew line, and I actually sew that and cut it out afterwards, because to get those, if you try and pin that small of an area, it's going to slip. It won't meet, and it doesn't come out. I've tried it. It doesn't. Not consistent anyway. You'll get it to bunch up when you're trying to turn it. Also, when you want to turn something real tight like that, when you do so, you can when you put the 2 right sides together, you can take a little ribbon and just sew that right into your seam allowance. Then, when you're turning it inside out, you can grab that ribbon and pull it, and it'll pull your point out. And then you can just snip that off. Yeah. It doesn't have to, you can use a little ribbon or like a small string. The thread won't work, the thread will break. But, you know, something not too big, because I know you'll see it in your seam allowance. But that works really well for small little tight areas, like wings and things like that. Oh, stuffing. So yeah, there's about 3 different stuffing products. There might be more, but what I've come across, there's like the polyfill, which is what I use mostly. I think most of us use that. There's also this cluster, and then there's a cotton one that you can use. Maybe if you're making a special plush for someone who's allergic to things, you can actually get like raw cotton. Quite expensive. I've only found it online. I haven't found it anywhere. But on my standard plushes, I use mostly all polyfill, and stuffing is an art form all in itself. You can use stuffing sticks. They have small ones that are roughly the size of like a chopstick, but they have like little grooves on them to help grab it. I actually use bigger sized dowels. I also use, my most favorite thing to use is my fingers. I use my fingers mostly so I can fill what the filling is doing, because it'll ball up. And the only way you can really know is if you've got your fingers in there. So I mostly use my fingers for doing that. You have to be careful that you're not like holding it really tight while you're doing it, because you'll get the finger dents in there and you'll never get those out. You gotta pull it out and start over. So stuffing, yeah, that takes a while to learn. It really did. If you saw some of my first ones, it's like crazy. Crazy. It's even when you want to get like the leg shape, like how you see on here how you have like a little hip here. That's all about how you stuff it. You're stuffing at angles. And like maybe this outside part's going to be tighter than the inside part, so you can get that. Or in the chest, or down here. It's about you're going to have different thicknesses and packed, I don't know how to say that, like density, I guess, will make a difference. It's just little things, little things. The little ones, I used all of the clusters so they're nice and soft and squishy. And stuffing. Okay, so the next thing is going to be, what are you doing? Assembly. I already told you a little bit about the manes and tails, pulling out the little things. I do all of my outside line work with just thread for the most part. I know there's some plushie makers out there, I would love to know who does that. I watch see their pictures, and their lines almost look like they're embroidered. And so it gives a nice thick detail, and I haven't quite figured out how to do that yet. Working on that. I love that look because it's much more defined. But my machine hasn't worked out for me. But, and I did go over the assembly already. I do, like I said, start with the wings, horn, and then I'll put the mane on, and then the tail. I do use wire, obviously, because they're so big in order to keep their shape on my princesses. All of the wire, none of it is exposed wire. All of it is, he's going to be able to explain this much better than I am. It's like this tubing on it, or of some sort, that keeps it safe. And when you bend it, you can shape it, and it's not going to have any points. It's not going to poke you. On the inside is the same thing. Explain that a little better.
Yeah, we have kind of a tube structure coming up through the legs that when we have any wire, say in the tail, we'll run the wire through the tail and all the way back, so both ends go into the tube structure, so that, because they're sharp, don't want them poking out. So first ones we tried, we just put them into the stuffing, and then you move their leg around, and then, so that's not so good. So with the tube structure in the legs, or if we have like large wings, like for Celestia, we have a tube structure in the front legs as well, which adds support. She's really got long, thin legs, and that makes that work out well.
I know not everyone is a fan of having the wire in them, and I totally understand that. There's plenty of plushes out there that don't have them, but in order to really get that elegance, height, and size, you have to have it. They're still huggable, lovable, bendable, played with. So, but it's really, really personal choice. You don't have to make them that way. You would just need to maybe make them a little smaller in order to get them. I wanted mine all scaled. If you had them all sitting next to each other, they're scaled so that Celestia is a little bigger than Luna, and Luna's a little bigger than Celestia, like they should be. Kind of a game for me. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to show you is a little slideshow of a princess going together. That's going to be a little bit different than what you saw on Pinkie Pie, because you're going to see the the assembly of their hoof covers. And that's, again, my husband, being the brilliant person he is, figured that out. Let me go ahead and show that. My son did all that for me, put that all together for me. So at this point, I guess we pretty much can take any questions you might have. Yeah? Yes?
Would it be possible to hand sew a giant one?
I suppose it would be. I think that there's a large one on the floor somewhere, and they actually did a workshop on doing a large one earlier in the show. Yep. Yes, ma'am?
What type of sticks do you like to use?
I'm sorry?
What type of sticks do you like?
What type of stitch do I use?
Sticks for stuffing?
Oh, sticks for stuffing. Is it?
Stitches.
Stitches. Okay, for actually sewing the pony?
Yeah.
I use a 3.0 width, and the standard is 2.5. I sew it 3.0 straight stitch. Just I use a 2.5 when I'm going to be going around the really tight ones because the 3 won't allow me to turn tightly. Yes.
Like a multicolored hair colors such as rainbow dash, how do you get the hair colors to look like they're like actually going with each other instead of like separate?
Okay. Rainbow Dash, did everyone hear the question?
Yeah.
Okay. She wanted to know how I got the Rainbow Dash hair colors to be together instead of separate. So the Rainbow Dash's hair, as well as hers and any of the multicolor hair, I actually have to cut those pieces out. And then I sew them together. And then once I sew them together and clip all the seams so that they'll lay straight, I then put them together inside out and sew them and then turn them right side out. Yeah. Yes?
How much time do you think you put into something like the Piggy Pie plushie out in the end?
Oh, I get that question all the time. I'm going to have to time it because I really don't know. I'm going to say maybe 2 to 3 days overall. I've never actually sat down and done one from start to finish. I work, so I come home and I'll work on it. I work on a little bit on the weekends, and I usually have several things going on. So I'm so sorry I can't give you an exact answer on that. Yes?
Do you have a favorite character to work on, or do you like to work on them equally? Like, are they all equally fun to make?
I want to say they're all probably equally fun to make. It would really depend on the mood I'm in. Well, if I really actually enjoy sewing the ponies, you have to kind of be in a mindset for doing something like Celestia's hair, or this one is much more difficult for the main design than even Celestia, because the first time I made her like a lot of the plushes I've seen with just yellow, because I kind of was looking at them going, oh, okay, this is what they should look at, watching the cartoon, not thinking about that outline. I was there, because when you're looking at it in the cartoon, you think of it as an outline. Oh, it didn't look good without it. So I thought, I got to add that in. And this is all has to be hand put on, so you can get that detail. So that oh boy, she's fun to make. She takes a lot of time, much more than I thought. Yes, ma'am.
How do you get the curl in the say cadence? Did you cut it out as the curl, or did you make it into the curl?
It's actually cut out in the curl that's built into the pattern. Pattern making, definitely pattern making, yeah. It's, yeah, because it's not bunched. Yeah, it's actually cut into the pattern. The pattern curls onto itself, and it's a manipulation of fabric when you're cutting. Yes?
What was your learning curve to go from the original Pinkie Pie to something like Cadence?
Well, it took about 21 pattern revisions that I'm going to admit to get here.
Admit?
Yeah, and, yeah, right. On the princesses, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, we had a little more experience by the time we got to
Yeah.
the princesses. Did all the main 6 first, and then when we started the princesses, we had a little more experience of what you can do wrong. and it made it look a little easier.
Yeah, a little
a few less
easier.
pattern revisions on those.
Yeah, those are like around 4 to 6 revisions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone else in back?
Can you elaborate a little bit on the market, the state of the plushie market, and how that influences how much product you're able to put out, or pricing, or your things like that?
Okay, that's interesting. I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. I have a DA account. People come to it and they note me and they ask me for them. So I have a commission line. I don't normally do conventions. I did one we went to EQLA. I sent my son, and I sent 10 ponies. I didn't, but and they did well. I think you did. About 7 of them, about less than half got new homes. When I came here, I brought 30. I didn't know, and most all of them have new homes. I really don't, I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for you on that, because I never really looked at it from that viewpoint. Someone asked me for one, if I have time, I make it for them. Yes?
How long does it take to do the eye?
The eyes?
Yeah, that part.
Should I know how long it
Yeah.
takes to embroider the eyes?
Yeah, that part I worked on. I looked through all the different vectors I could find that the artists had come up with, and the different clips in the shows, and I'd find the best eye I thought looked good, and then I would design the eye based on that for the embroidery, and that's what I would do.
Yes.
What did you use for the original eye for that Pinkie?
It's felt.
Yeah,
it's felt. Yeah. Yes, in the pink?
Oh, sorry. For the embroidery, when you were talking about the eyes, I have a lot of problems with Minky that stretches and it messes up with the embroidery. How do you get over that?
Yeah, so did I.
Yes.
Yeah, that was one of my learning curve difficulties. I went through a lot of different stabilizers. I tried different fabrics and stuff at first, and the stabilizer was the key. And I found like the stiffer ones, like they have what's the
Stiffy?
name of that?
It's
Stiffy.
gosh, not
who makes
Hellon, the other one.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't think of the name of it right now.
But yeah, it's called Stiffy.
It's called Stiffy.
That's worked the best for me because it doesn't allow the fabric to stretch or move. And also with Minky, you have a trouble with the Minky coming through the stitching. So you can also use a solvay on top, so that when it stitches it, it doesn't fill in in between all the stitches and leave Minky sticking out.
Thanks so much.
Yes, sir.
Which princess did you make first, and was it a personal project or a commission?
Celestia was the first one I made. All of my ponies are not commissioned first. I would never do that because I don't know how long or how it would turn out. And I like to have a pony, so she's definitely my ponies. So she was definitely my first one, and Okay, in orange.
Somebody looking to maybe start doing this themselves, how expensive are the materials?
Well, if you're talking about first of all, just sewing machines, those are very expensive. Embroidery machines are crazy expensive. So that in itself is, I would get maybe just a simple machine, sewing machine, if you don't even have that, and just start there, and maybe have someone do the embroidery for you. We have some great embroidery artists in our community where you can actually get the eyes and cutie marks and maybe apply those and until you get to where you feel really great and you're comfortable and you know what you're doing, or you're happy with what you're doing. Then maybe invest in those machines. The Minky itself, it can be quite expensive depending on how much you buy. The smaller quantities you buy, the larger the cost. It goes to, about $22 a yard, $18 to $22 a yard. Just be about right, yeah. And if you buy it in bulk, you can get it for a little lower, at around $8. And you make, start building a rapport with your suppliers. This one. Yes.
For the tinier plushies like Fluttershy, was it hard to make the manes and wings?
A little bit. It wasn't too bad. Just sewing them in general was a lot harder because it was just like a teeny 1/8 inch seam allowance for the whole thing, and it was very tedious. But it's not necessarily any harder than making a regular one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's see. Yes, sir.
This is for your husband.
Okay.
How do you answer to the people around your age when they react negatively about you embroidering?
Oh. Yeah, that's interesting. Like when I go to Joann's or someplace to get fabric, I feel really kind of awkward because my background is in construction.
It's still construction.
Yeah. But that took a little getting used to it. Actually didn't really notice too much to that because I saw a lot of people there, like wives with their husbands and stuff, and they were just kind of following them around, But I had a pretty good experience with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got used to it.
We're obviously not, the young crowd. When anyone questions me, like people at work, you're doing what? And I tell them how great the community is and how wonderful it is to go and be around people who are actually nice, right? They're not complaining about their work or all wrapped up in some craziness, and so I make them envy me. It's like, really? Wow. Yes.
Other than Minky, what other fabric would you suggest using?
I didn't quite hear the last part. I heard stretches, but I didn't hear the other part right around that.
What would you do instead of Minky? What would be a different fabric that you would use?
I would definitely use fleece. Fleece is it's soft, so when you make something, it's still something you might want to cuddle and have, even though it's maybe not be your most perfect thing that you've made. So I would go there, and it kind of simulates the slide of what Minky's going to be like, but it's a little easier to handle. Okay. Was a gentleman. Let's see. Yes, ma'am.
You have to take the Hasbro to make those and sell them. I know, like, if you use NFL material, you have to say, I am not going to sell this when I make it. If you're selling their characters, do you have to, are you responsible for Hasbro? Do they act exactly fit?
No.
Okay.
No. Mm-mm. Yes, sir.
When choosing a Minky material, what should someone look for and avoid?
That's hard because I'm actually basically looking for color, and you're so limited. Like say Applejack's color, I use mango, and there's really only one place you can get it, and you just have to hope when you get it that the quality is great. The light pink that I use for Pinkie Pie and Cadence, I've been getting from one supplier since the beginning when I started. And when on the last order that I got, and I was using it for her, I had all the squares cut out, and my husband goes, this doesn't feel quite right. And I pulled it out, and the sides were the 3mm pile like it should be, and the whole center was like maybe 1. And you can't return it. The only place that I've found that will take a return on Minky, even if you've made a wrong color choice, is the Minky Boutique. They're awesome to work with. They take a little long to get you your fabric, but they're awesome to work with. Very awesome. Yes, ma'am.
If somebody's looking to get into plushie making and like haven't quite figured out where to start yet, who's a good starter pony?
A good starter pony?
Yeah, it's a good one just to start, like, just to get the feel for like the sewing and stuff.
I would probably say Pinkie Pie or Fluttershy.
Fluttershy? Is that
Look at the wings.
It is even, well, you're going to want to learn to make the wings. The wings are not that hard. They're really not. If you really kind of study the show, they're, you know. Yeah, but I mean, the body of the pony is going to be pretty much the same regardless of which one you choose. Yes, ma'am.
What did you use for the original eyes when you first designed?
Those are made out of felt. Yes, ma'am.
Some artists want to make this the body or the main tails.
Definitely the mane and tails.
Yes.
Definitely, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
What is the tubing made out of?
It's a polyurethane tubing. It's a most commonly I've seen it used for like refrigerators. They use it for the water line.
So is it plastic?
It's a plastic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How do you embroider like the crown necklace without showing the backing?
We do show the backing. And I just noticed that her crown isn't here.
Oh, I brought the one without the crown.
Yeah. I didn't sew all the crowns on because if I'm taking them home, I didn't want them to be get damaged. But if you look at the back of our crowns, they're actually the same on the back as they are the front. You just do that by changing your bobbin thread to match whatever part that you're embroidering. Yes.
For a person who's just getting started, what kind of material would you use? Like, instead of making, what would you use?
Fleece.
Okay.
Definitely fleece.
Fleece.
Yeah.
If you don't have an embroidery machine, what is another option you could use for like the eyes and the cutie mark and stuff?
There's lots of options out there. You can, like I said, reach out to the community. There's several people that actually make the embroidery, and they'll make them into patches for you that you can then apply. You can sew on. You can use felt. People have painted them. They have this really fabulous iron-on cotton fabric where you can go and then draw your own eye or choose one and have it printed on there, carefully cut it out and actually iron it on. There's all kinds of possible mediums to do that on. So there's lots of choices there. Yes, sir?
How do you get the fluting on the horn?
On my regular ponies, on the main 6 and the backgrounds, I actually just sew, I take I have no horn pattern. They're always after me about making a horn pattern. I take a square piece of fabric and I sew at a 45 on it, just lines, and then I fold it in half and sew the shape of the horn and turn it inside out. With my princesses, I use ribbon. So I take the piece of fabric, fold it over, and I run the ribbon very tightly along the fold, and then I sew it down. Using that ribbon, I pull it out, and then I stuff it and just wrap the ribbon around, and then sew the ribbon onto it, of course, but otherwise it'll come off. But yeah, that's what I use. I've also seen it with cording. It's very pretty. Yes, ma'am.
Would it be possible to assemble an embroidery machine using spare parts?
I have no idea. I would imagine no, just because one of our machines is, if you go to our house, it looks like Terminator going on there. He actually has it not with its outsides on it because it constantly needs to be monitored for spitting oil.
Yeah.
So
wouldn't recommend the machine.
yeah, so it was. I have no idea. I bet if you're super smart, you could do that. I wouldn't be able to do that. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a specific place you go to find pony patterns, or do you make your own?
We make all our own. Yeah, these are all our own. Yeah.
Yeah, like I made up a few plushies already, and I'm trying to make higher quality ones. And I can't make patterns, so just get them online, and they're not the best. So like, where can I find like the best
Patterns for free.
I mean, that's an important aspect.
I don't know who has the best pattern because it would depend on what expression you're trying to capture in your pony. To be really perfectly honest, I don't recall if it was my son or my girlfriend's daughter showed me, well, if you just search pony patterns on DA, my son, all these come up, and I like briefly looked at it for just a minute because it was before we were coming to BronyCon. So I don't really know, and as I said, I recommend Valley Violet's. It might not be the best pattern, but she has such fabulous instructions that you can easily make it if you're willing to take the time to read and understand it. And it's really going to be modifying any pattern that you go and you buy or you find. It's going to be modifications because if they're free, they're not going to be the best. Yes, ma'am.
How do you combine the pre-filled tail with, I noticed in a lot of the slideshows you left filling sticking out of the tail. How do you combine the pre-filled tail with that filling from standing pony?
When you're sew it on.
When I sew it on, that's what you mean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I use that what I do here is that it's a little extra longer, so I kind of roll that in, and I need that to fill in that little emptiness that I'm creating by trying to roll that fabric in. It's kind of hard to try and get it on there and stuff it in, so I leave it there and kind of meet it so that it'll be full, and then I sew it on. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
For Cadence's wings, how did you get the color on the end?
Oh, that's hand-dyed. And there's an interesting story with that. I have two cadences, and I had all the wings dyed and sewed on and setting downstairs, and it was my son again, or the young lady that I work with. They said, "They're not dyed, Mom." I went, "Yes, they are. I did that. They're done." I come downstairs and I look, all the dye is gone. They're pink. It just disappeared. I don't know what happened. No clue. I had to take them off. I got a new dye and redid that. That's an adventure. Anyone wants to try doing that, I definitely suggest getting polyester dye, and it needs to be really hot, and make sure that the minky is wet with cold water, really wet and wrung out, because if it isn't, it will grab the dye and it is just this color, and it won't come out. Well, I guess it would if you bleached it, but you can't use any bleach because it's pink. Your base is pink. But that took me, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks of dyeing. My sink was purple. No one was cooking. but it works. It does work. So, yeah. You know? Yes.
Which pony is your best seller?
Rarity. And then my best princess is Luna. Luna is. Luna. Yeah, I have standing orders for Luna. I never not have an order for Luna. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could elaborate on some of the techniques or tricks you use to move or to design a pattern for 3 dimensions on like a 2D sheet of fabric.
That's difficult because you have to allow for stretch. Do you want to talk about it, or?
Yeah. Let's see. That is one of the difficult parts. Because the stretch is the key. Like once you bake one, then you can see what you need to adjust or change. So I do a lot of measuring and see how much more I want to add. Because like you add to one side, the pattern is basically, because it's 3-dimensional, you have the other side. So you got to figure it's going to double that, and just change it just a little bit, and then make another one, and see if that's going toward the direction you want. And if you try to do too much, then you're way too far the other way. So it's just really surprising how much a little tiny change will show up when the fabric stretches.
Yeah. If you saw my patterns, you would be very amazed. They don't look anything like what you see here because it's all stretch allowed.
Have you ever tried to make wing crystals?
No. I have lots of requests for that, but no. But I know a young lady that makes a very nice one, and when people ask me for that, I kind of direct her over to White Dove because she makes a beautiful one. So I'll ask.
How do you manage to stitch the main phone?
How do I stitch them on?
Yes. What
it
kind of stitches, or how do you attach the main?
Oh, it's all done by hand. It's just by hand, and each one is different depending on where I can get in there and make sure it's hidden.
You just make the stitch up for the where it fits.
Yep, kind of like, it's more about how I want the mane to set on the pony. So I'll pin it down really good, and then that's kind of where I'll stitch it. Not necessarily always the same, because it just depends on how that particular hair will come out, or how, or the shape of the head is. And I like to flip them. I usually do it this way, you know. Yes, sir?
Are there any good opportunities that you can use a different fabric from the base fabric? Like, for example, accessories like Princess Cake or Granny Smith's Walker?
You're asking if I could use a different fabric for those things? Yeah, sure.
I could use like a different.
For outer clothing, yeah, for sure.
Or even like manes too, if you really want.
Well, yeah, you could. It would probably be a trial and error on the patterns again, because since most of my patterns allow for a stretch of it, if it was a fabric that didn't stretch, you'd probably have to do some pattern adjusting.
Do you have any tips for those that want to make their own patterns?
Sure. You need to first just decide what's your inspiration going to be. What, is it going to be a comic or a particular artist or the show itself? And once you've decided that, pick an expression. What is it you want your pony to say when people see it? And then take those images and put them somewhere where you can look at them without being distracted by maybe other background things that are going on in the picture or anything that would just not allow you to see that. And then start drawing. Yeah, just start drawing. Yes?
Like, when he has that shade thing, you know how you would make like the holes in the legs?
I've had some ideas about it, but nothing that I've been willing to try to do. That's, again, I would leave that up to the master that has done that. She would definitely be able to maybe answer that question. She has a little secret she might not want to give away. Yes, sir.
Is this you have obviously mastered what you're doing. Is this still a sideline job, or is it becoming a primary source of money?
No. I definitely have a full-time job that is definitely my source of income. This is definitely a hobby. I wouldn't want to do it as a source of income because then it becomes work. And it's definitely a hobby because I actually do other sewing as well. So it's for fun. Yes, sir.
Who's your most expensive?
That would be Princess Celestia. She's my most. She has a lot of work in her. Yeah. Okay, we'll take one more and then we'll do the raffle. Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever thought of making Princess Big Mac or Snowflake?
No. I haven't had anyone ask me for that yet. Yeah. Okay. So we probably have just enough time to do the raffle. Is there anything just dying to ask me? No? Okay, let's do this.
Pinkie Pie got Pinkie Pie.
And we'll do rarity.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you everyone for coming.